Guatemala's president-elect Bernardo Arévalo suspended the transition process and announced the measures against the members of the public prosecutor's office. The Russian President Vladimir Putin received his North Korean counterpart Kim Jong Un at the Vostochny cosmodrome, where he pledged support for the North Korean space race. In Sudan, over 100 people, mostly civilians, have been killed in bombings in the capital region. Hello from the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba. This is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. In Guatemala, Bernardo Arévalo, the country's president-elect, suspended the transition process and announced measures against the members of the public prosecutor's office. After completing the second protocolar step for the orderly handover of mandates agreed with President Alejandro Giammattei, Arévalo temporarily suspended the entire process. He claims that the conditions are not adequate after the Special Prosecutor's Office against impunity intervened at least 160 electoral boxes. The leader of the Semilla movement points directly to Attorney General Consuelo Porras, the prosecutor Rafael Curruchiche, and Judge Freddy Guevara, whom he identifies as the ringleaders of the coup d'etat. The Salvadoran parliament has approved on Tuesday for the 18th time an extension of President Nayib Bukele's emergency regime. The Central American nation has now spent 17 months with limited constitutional guarantees as a strategy to reduce violence. The request, presented by the Minister of Security, Gustavo Villatoro, was approved by the ruling party Nuevas Ideas and its allies with 67 votes. Although the United Nations organization, based on evidence provided by Salvadoran organizations, has expressed concerns about the length of the time and the excesses committed under this regime, the President of the Parliament has insisted on its effectiveness. The Venezuelan President, Nicolás Maduro Moros, met with the director of the International Center for Poverty Reduction in China, Liu Junwen, during his official visit to the Asian country. As part of the work agenda, the Venezuelan head of state emphasized that both sides discussed participation in the high-level forum on poverty reduction and development, scheduled for the end of October, as well as the plan to strengthen the firm commitment to adopting policies that contribute to erasing the symmetries of capitalism and generate poverty. The Venezuelan head of state detailed the national government's policies related to poverty eradication and social care plans to protect citizens from the devastating effects of unilateral coercive measures. Our colleagues Adriana Siori and Marcos da Silva continue finding and collecting stories that showcase Venezuelans' daily life, their creativity, resilience, and capacities. In a new episode of our series, Venezuela on the Move, we learned about the work of a group of women in Petare neighborhood east of Caracas who found in the art of the needles and threads a way to help their community and also sustain their households. Their workshop serves as an atelier for repair and crafting and also as a school for younger apprentices, and is a vivid example that every shining diamond starts as a humble charcoal piece. Let's see.
Inside the shop, Irene slows down the foot pedal. She attends to her first customer. At the age of 19, she felt the texture of fabrics for the first time, and to this day, she hasn't stopped stitching.
This is our trench from where we help the community. Here in this workshop, we generally do repairs for the community at a very low cost. And the only thing we charge for is labor as people bring their own materials.
The cost is the equivalent of $1. They also make uniforms, shirts, and T-shirts for companies, which gives them a little more profit. Raquel is the eldest in the workshop, and her skill in handling the thread and needle makes her a master of the trade.
In all these years, I have also helped several people in the community to learn how to sew. Family members and non-family as well, neighbors, because my whole life has been sewing.
These sewing machines don't stop. At least 10 people a day show up at the shop asking for their services. One of the young women works part-time. Her passion for sewing has brought her here.
What I used to do was mainly sewing. I had no idea of how to cut. And after the classes I have done here, I now know how to cut. I identify myself more with children's clothes. I love working with baby clothes. I make headbands, bows. I make tutus. I love my country. I believe in my country, and I think there is a lot of potential here.
This cut and sew shop is located at the hills of one of the urban areas where people with low income live. It was founded in 2011, and since then they haven't lost a thread. The formula, they say, is to help the community.
Marcos da Silva y Adriana Sibori, TeleSUR, Caracas.
And young people in Nicaragua are proving that education in the countryside is a powerful tool for change, boosting professional development and dynamizing its economies. The story from our correspondent, Kenia Doña.
In the heart of the natural beauty of the northern region of Nicaragua, specifically in the department of Jinotega, the university in the countryside continues to transform communities. Anilka Ixamara Montenegro Lopez is studying agribusiness engineering through this educational strategy promoted by the government.
I'm currently in the fourth year of agribusiness engineering, and I was very interested in it because it is a career that is not very well recognized. Although it is very important for a country to help provide an added value to the goods we Nicaraguans produce in the countryside, such as milk. When they said they were going to open a university in the countryside here in the municipality of Alucua, I said, "This is the opportunity I have been waiting for. I'm not going to let it pass."
This young single mother is an example of how education in the Nicaraguan countryside has motivated young people to innovation and entrepreneurship.
I started making yogurt and baking cakes. I started making cakes about a year, in November last year, and on my way 30. Thank God. I made 18 cakes, which means that it's something that people have liked. And it's not only to work for someone else, but also it teaches us how we can grow, how we can learn and become entrepreneurs.
In the same area of the country, we visited Norvin de Jesus Celedon Juan, another student of the university in the countryside, whose family is dedicated to agricultural and livestock activities, and that's how the idea to study a related career came about.
If the university comes and gives me the opportunity to continue my studies and strengthen my knowledge, that's very useful for me. The program has been very important because it has allowed me, for example, to validate the knowledge I had.
Honey production with native bees is the area he has developed the most in his farm.
In ideal conditions, we have been able to produce up to 5 barrels of Apis mellifero honey. In relation to the Melipona bees, we have not done much. But we have managed to produce 2 or 3 20-liter buckets.
The university in the countryside is a government educational program aimed at residents of rural areas in the country. Its objective is the promotion of socio-economic development in order to help reducing poverty in the most vulnerable populations of the rural sector through the technical and professional training of its young people, with careers that meet the needs of its localities.
Kenia Doña, TeleSUR, Nicaragua.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find the news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. On Wednesday, Russian President Vladimir Putin received his North Korean counterpart, Kim Jong Un, at the Vostochny cosmodrome, where he pledged support for the North Korean space race. Hours earlier, in an interview to his nation's media, the North Korean leader had described this trip as an expression of the strategic importance Pyongyang attaches to bilateral relations with Moscow. In the first part of the meeting, they toured the base facilities, including the Soyuz 2 rocket launch pad. Although the Russian president assured that various issues will be discussed calmly at Wednesday's meeting and said that his country will support the space race launched by Pyongyang. The Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Tuesday that he had no concerns in the recent devaluation of the Russian currency. Speaking at the Eastern Economic Forum, Putin said that there are several factors affecting the currency exchange rate, but these are controllable factors. He admitted that the increased key borrowing interest rate restrains the economy, but added that it is a significant factor in reducing inflation risks. Putin also declared that the central bank did the right thing by raising the rate to 12%. When asked about the government's plan to rein in the exchange rate, the Russian president answered that the current approach was to have private enterprises attempting to withdraw foreign currency abroad cooperate peacefully before any regulations, such as the return of revenues, were put in place.
The central bank, of course, had to raise the key rate to 12%, also because inflation began to rise slightly in our country. What we have now is 5.4% or 5.2%, I don't remember, approximately 5.2% on an annual basis. So the central bank responded to this. It couldn't but react, and I think it did the right thing, in a timely manner. Yes. This reduces lending opportunities, slightly restrains the economy and economic development, but it is a significant factor in reducing inflation risks.
And Russian humanitarian aid arrived Tuesday in the breakaway region of NagornoKarabakh via a territory controlled by Azerbaijan. According to the rebel government's information center, using Nagorno-Karabakh's Armenian name, the Russian Red Cross humanitarian aid was delivered to the Republic of Artsakh on Tuesday. That link, the Lashin corridor, is policed by Russian peacekeepers as part of a ceasefire agreement Moscow brokered between the ex-Soviet Caucasus nations in 2020. Armenia has accused Azerbaijan of spurring a humanitarian crisis in Nagorno-Karabakh by closing the sole road linking the mountainous territory with Armenia. On the other hand, Baku has rejected the claim, saying Nagorno-Karabakh could receive supplies via Azerbaijani-controlled territory. Baku and Yerevan have been unable to reach a lasting peace settlement, despite mediation efforts by the European Union, the United States, and Russia. In the United States, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy announced an investigation to impeach President Joe Biden. The House leader ordered the beginning of a formal impeachment investigation against the U.S. president, who is being accused of alleged corruption. According to McCarthy, the investigation is based on allegations that Biden lied when he claimed he was unaware of illicit business dealings by members of his family. This investigation follows the House's inquiries into alleged criminal activities involving the president and the foreign business dealings of his son, Hunter Biden. And the number of children in poverty in the United States has doubled. The nation now has more than 9 million. According to official data, this is the largest increase in poverty for children in just 1 year in the history of this country. According to Sharon Parrott, who chairs the Center for Budget and Policy Authorities and Priorities, this increase is the responsibility of Congress. The overall poverty rate has also increased from 7.8% to 12.4%. Experts said these figures are a result of a policy decisions that prioritize tax cuts for the wealthy, with the main beneficiaries of the federal assistance. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at TeleSUR English, and there you will be able to rewatch our interviews, the top stories, the special broadcastings, and more. Just hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. We have a final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back. Floods caused by Storm Daniel that devastated the eastern Libyan city of Derna left more than 5,000 dead and thousands missing, emergency services said on Tuesday. The disaster in the country was caused by torrential rains from Storm Daniel, which made landfall in Libya on Sunday after earlier hitting other Mediterranean countries, especially Greece, but also Bulgaria and Turkey. The coastal city of Derna is surrounded by hills and divided by a normally dry riverbed in summer, but which has become a raging torrent that has also washed away several major bridges. Libyan television pictures showed dozens of corpses wrapped up in blankets or sheets in Derna's main square, awaiting identification and burial. More than 300 victims were buried on Monday, many in mass graves, but it was feared that a greater number of people were lost in the waters of the river that flows into the Mediterranean Sea. And officials from Libya's UN-backed government hold a press conference in Tripoli following catastrophic flash floods that breached river dams and swept through the eastern coastal city of Derna, devastating entire neighborhoods. Officials stress that the situation in Derna is very difficult, adding that several countries have offered to send aid.
Regions of Libya who are affiliated with the Ministry of Youth have arrived in the city of Benghazi. We have also received assistance offers from Tunisia, Algeria, Malta, Italy, France, the United Arab Emirates, Turkey, and Qatar. Trained rescue teams have arrived from Turkey, while other teams continue to arrive from Egypt, Algeria, Italy, the United Arab Emirates, and other friendly countries.
The situation in the city of Derna is very difficult. We have set up a field hospital at the Faculty of Law in the University of Derna. The hospital is currently operational, and its staff are coordinating with the specialized teams in recovering bodies and providing first aid to the injured.
And Egypt has sent 3 military cargo planes to Libya on Tuesday with a large quantity of humanitarian aid to the victims of the recent catastrophic flash floods in the country. According to a press release by Egypt's Defense Ministry, the assistance includes medicines, medical supplies, tents and search and rescue teams, and is part of Egypt's solidarity with the Libyan people to help alleviate the effects of the recent Storm Daniel. In Sudan, over 100 people, mostly civilians, have been killed in bombings in the capital region in the last 48 hours. The Sudanese non-governmental organization, Lawyers for Emergencies, denounces indiscriminate bombings in residential areas and markets in Khartoum, the capital, and Omdurman. They blame the attacks on both the Sudanese army and the paramilitary rapid support forces. Between the Nile and Omdurman regions, almost 51 people were killed by aerial artillery between Sunday and Monday, in addition to the 53 victims of the bombing in the market in Khartoum that left around 300 wounded on Monday. The Rwandan government signed an agreement on Tuesday with a Canadian-German startup to build an experimental nuclear reactor, saying it would help reduce use of fossil fuels in the African nation. The reactor will be ready for testing in 2026, according to Dual Fluid Energy, the startup responsible for building the prototype. The company's CEO, Guts Ruprecht, told reporters in Kigali that the new reactors can be used to produce electricity, hydrogen, and synthetic fuels at costs below those of fossil fuels. Rwanda's Minister of Infrastructure, Ernest Zambimana, said the use of nuclear power will provide a stable and reliable source of electricity, reducing dependence on fossil fuels and helping to meet growing energy demands. Moreover, the Atomic Energy Board and Dual Fluid Energy said their plans pose no threat to the population or the environment.
Of course, Rwanda is aiming to have reliable and stable energy, of course, as attracting more investors and then focusing on heavy industry coming new years coming. So this is actually the focus and the target of having reliable and stable nuclear energy.
Small, and because it's small, you don't need to spend much money for all the structural materials and for the surroundings. So this means we can produce electricity with this reactor for a fraction of the price of today's nuclear reactors, which are already cheaper than many other energy sources.
And Damascus was visited by the UN Secretary-General's Special Envoy for Syria, Geir Pedersen, as part of the UN's ongoing efforts to achieve a political solution to the crisis in the Arab country. Let's see the details on this visit in the following report by our correspondent, Hisham Wanas.
The visit took place to assess with the Syrian authorities the preparations for the 9th meeting of the Syrian Constitution Discussion Committee, to be held for the first time after several months of deadlock in the capital of the Sultanate of Oman as a result of Damascus' return to the Arab League. I have discussed with the Syrian government the implementation of the step-by-step solution process and also the preparations for the next meeting of the Syrian Constitutional Committee. And I will continue the talks with the friendly Arab diplomats, and I will hold meetings with the Arab foreign ministers when I go to New York for the United Nations General Assembly session. And also, of course, I will meet with the foreign ministers of Turkey, Iran, and Russia. And I hope we can consolidate some of the agreements that we had already reached earlier. In this context, Pedersen updated the Syrian authorities on his meeting in Damascus with the heads of the Arab diplomatic missions accredited in Syria, as well as on his contacts with other regional and international countries interested in a political solution to the crisis. A solution that the Syrian Foreign Ministry made clear to the international mediator clashes with Washington's interference policies marked by occupation, support for terrorist gangs and separatist militias, the imposition of illegal coercive measures, and the plundering of the natural resources of the Syrian people.
Western pressure on Syria has increased on the eve of the international mediator's visit to Damascus, and this pressure materialized with increased terrorist attacks and attempts to block the borders between Syria and Iraq, as well as the mobilization of more invading U.S. troops on Syrian soil, and all this to force the Syrian government to offer concessions at the next meeting of the Constitutional Committee in the Sultanate of Oman, and therefore to gain more from any possible solution to the crisis.
In parallel to Pedersen's visit to Damascus and in response to continued terrorist attacks against civilians and military personnel, the Syrian Arab Army's heavy artillery and missiles, supported by Russia's aerospace force, annihilated 111 terrorists and destroyed their strongholds in Idlib and Hama. A counter-terrorist war action that Syria and its allies consider essential to the success of any diplomatic efforts to solve the conflict.
Hisham Wanas, TeleSUR, Damascus, Syria.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.